Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at declarative UI frameworks.
Oh, exciting.
It's changing the way we think about user interfaces.
Yeah.
Ever feel like building a UI is like solving a puzzle, piece by piece?
Mm-hmm.
Well, imagine if you could just describe the picture you want and poof, the puzzle assembles itself.
That's a great way to put it.
That's declarative UI.
Yeah, declarative UI is all about the what, not the how.
Exactly.
It's like you're giving instructions to a master builder.
Right.
You tell them what you want the final building to look like, and they handle all the details.
For this deep dive, you brought some blueprints.
I did.
We're going to be exploring two sources. Why? Declarative UI frameworks and Jetpack Compose basics.
These sources give a great overview of how UI development has evolved.
Okay, so before we get to the what, let's talk about the why.
Sure.
What were the pain points of traditional UI development that led to this paradigm shift? Was it really that bad?
Well, imagine building a house where every time you want to open a window, you had to manually adjust all these gears and levers.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of what traditional UI development felt like sometimes.
Sounds tedious.
It was
Yeah.
older UI frameworks were often object-oriented.
Okay.
Every element on the screen, every button, text field was a separate object in your code.
Yeah.
And to change anything, you had to manipulate those objects directly,
Oh, geez.
keeping track of their relationships and how they interacted.
So it was a lot of moving parts.
It was like managing a giant web of interconnected parts.
Yeah, so
Many parts.
I can see how that could lead to complicated code, especially for larger applications,
Exactly.
and probably a lot of headaches trying to keep everything organized.
Yeah, it made the code harder to read, harder to maintain,
Right.
and harder to share with other developers.
So enter declarative UI frameworks.
Look, a breath of fresh air.
Right.
Exactly.
Instead of fiddling with those objects, we describe what we want the UI to look like, and the framework handles the rest.
That's the idea.
I like it.
Declarative UI frameworks separate UI definition from the code. It's like having a blueprint for your house.
Right.
You define the layout and design,
Right.
and the construction crew handles the building.
So how did this evolution of UI frameworks play out?
Mm-hmm.
Were there any early attempts at this declarative approach before Jetpack Compose?
Oh, absolutely. There were early examples.
Oh, cool.
Like JavaFX,
Okay.
macOS storyboards,
Mhm.
WPF, even Android's XML layouts.
Oh, right.
All dipped their toes into declarative UI.
Interesting.
They let developers visually design the UI separate from the code to some extent.
So they were on the right track.
Yeah, but they still had limitations.
Right.
Managing data flow and keeping the UI in sync with the app state wasn't as seamless as it could be.
So it needed better tools and patterns.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
To truly unlock the power of declarative UI.
To unlock the power.
That's where design patterns like MVP, MVVM, and MVC came in.
Right. The design patterns.
They provided a structured way to manage the data and logic,
Gotcha.
making it easier to keep the UI in sync with the underlying data.
So those patterns helped bridge the gap
They did.
between early declarative attempts
Yeah.
and the more advanced frameworks.
Precisely. They set the stage for the truly powerful declarative UI framework.
But at the heart of this evolution,
Is the concept of state?
state. Interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Why is state so important to declarative UI?
Well, in those early frameworks, we still had to tell the framework how to change the UI.
Oh, okay.
For example, if a button was clicked,
Yeah.
we had to write code to find the text field
Right.
and update its value
Manually.
manually. Yes.
Okay.
It was still very hands-on.
So even though we were describing the UI separately,
Mhm.
we were still stuck micromanaging each update.
Yes, but then frameworks started to see the UI as a reflection of the application's state.
Oh,
Think of it like this. The UI is a mirror,
I like that.
reflecting the current values in our data. Instead of telling the framework how to update each element, we describe what the entire UI should look like based on the data.
So if the data changes,
Yeah,
the UI updates automatically.
it ought it. It's like a magic mirror
I like it.
that instantly adjusts its reflection.
That's really cool.
This was pioneered by frameworks like React on the web,
Okay.
which showed the power of letting the framework handle UI updates based on state changes.
State is like a game changer.
It is.
It seems to be the key to unlocking the true power of declarative UI.
It is.
And that brings us to Jetpack Compose.
Yes.
It's Android's declarative UI toolkit.
That's right. Jetpack Compose is like a modern architect
Okay.
who loves prefabricated building blocks
Nice.
to create stunning structures.
Nice.
It leverages Kotlin functions and composition,
Hmm.
combining small, reusable pieces to build complex UIs.
And I hear it's always getting better with continuous updates.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's great.
Always evolving.
So for those starting out with Jetpack Compose, what are the essential components they need to know about?
Jetpack Compose is structured as a collection of modules,
Cool.
each specializing in a specific aspect of UI development.
I see.
Like a toolbox
Oh.
filled with different compartments, each holding specific tools.
I like that.
So you don't need every tool for every project.
You just pick and choose what you need.
Exactly. That's one of the great things about Jetpack Compose.
Cool.
It's modular and flexible.
So what are some of those tools?
Well, some of the core modules you'll likely be working with are .compose.compiler. That's
Yeah.
the engine behind the scenes.
Got it.
It transforms those at composable functions into UI code.
Okay.
Then there's compose.foundation.
All right.
It provides the basic building blocks,
The essentials.
things like text, basic shapes, layout elements.
The bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
Nice.
Compose.runtime is where the magic happens.
Okay.
State management and runtime.
Gotcha.
It's the heart of the declarative approach.
Keeping everything in sync.
Yes. Compose.animation.
Ooh, animations.
This module is all about creating smooth, engaging animations.
Very cool.
Then there's compose.ui,
Okay.
the essential tools for interacting with the device,
Mm,
handling layout, drawing, input events.
makes sense.
And if you're a fan of material design,
Yeah.
there's compose.material3,
Okay.
providing pre-built components that follow material design.
So it keeps everything looking nice and consistent.
Exactly. Modern and consistent.
It sounds like Jetpack Compose has everything you need
It really does.
to build beautiful and functional Android UIs.
Yes.
So how do we actually start constructing those UIs?
Mhm.
How do we put these tools to use?
First, you set up your project to use Jetpack Compose.
Okay.
You add the necessary dependencies to the build file.
Right.
Then you can integrate Compose into your activities.
So activities are like the containers for the UI.
Exactly. Think of them as the containers.
And you mentioned earlier something called @composable functions.
Yes.
So those.
Those are the heart and soul of Jetpack Compose.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're special functions you write to describe the UI.
Gotcha.
Imagine them as building blocks,
I like that.
each representing a part of your UI, like a button, text field.
So instead of complex object hierarchies,
Mhm.
we're defining our UI with these functions.
Yes, it's much more streamlined.
Now, what makes them different from regular functions?
They are annotated with the @composable annotation.
Okay.
This tells the compiler that this function describes a piece of UI.
Got it.
And the cool part is you can preview these functions in your IDE.
Oh, wow.
So you can see your UI elements come to life as you're writing the code.
That's amazing.
No more waiting for the app to build.
Right.
You get instant visual feedback.
That must speed up development so much.
It really does. Huge time saver.
Okay, what else is special about them? How do we customize them?
Well, composable functions can receive parameters,
Okay, like regular functions.
just like regular functions.
Yeah,
You use these to pass in data
right.
and customize the appearance.
So like text for a button. Exactly. Colors for a background,
They could-
dimensions for a layout.
So we're passing data into these functions to control how they look and behave.
Precisely.
It sounds really flexible.
It is. You also have modifiers.
Right, modifier.
These let you refine the appearance and behavior even further.
So it's more granular control.
Yes. Modifiers give you a lot of power and flexibility.
Okay.
For example, you can control the size and position of elements,
Okay.
add padding, margins, apply backgrounds, even create animations.
Animations. Nice.
Yeah.
So modifiers are a key part of making UIs interactive and engaging.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine you have a simple text composable.
Okay.
You can use a modifier like fill max width to make it stretch across the screen,
Oh, cool.
or padding to add some spacing around it.
So it's not so cramped.
Exactly.
And you can chain these modifiers together.
Absolutely. That's one of the cool things about them.
Okay.
You can chain them to create a sequence of transformations. You could use dot padding followed by background to add padding and then a colored background.
So we're building the structural elements of our UI with these.
Yes.
But what are the dynamic aspects?
Right.
Like state changes?
State is essential for building truly interactive UIs.
I agree.
In Jetpack Compose, we manage state using special functions.
Okay.
One key function is mutable state of.
Mutable state of. Interesting.
This is where we define the data that drives the UI.
Okay.
Mutable means the value can be changed.
Got it.
So this creates data that the UI can react to.
That's cool.
Whenever this data changes, Compose updates the UI automatically.
Automatically.
Yes.
Wow, it takes care of all that behind-the-scenes work.
It does.
But how do we make sure this state is preserved across the app?
That's where the remember function comes in.
Remember, okay.
It ensures that the state created with mutable state is preserved.
Preserved across what?
Recomposition cycles.
Recomposition cycles, what are those?
In Jetpack Compose, whenever the state of your app changes, it triggers a recomposition.
Okay.
This means the functions affected by that change are reevaluated.
Interesting.
And the UI is updated.
So it's like a refresh cycle for the UI.
That's a great way to think about it.
Based on the data.
Yeah, and remember, make sure the state isn't lost during recomposition.
It remembers.
It's like a little memory bank for the UI.
Okay, I'm starting to get how those work together to manage state.
Yes.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine a simple counter app.
Like pressing a button to increment a number.
Exactly.
Okay.
You'd use mutable state of to store the current count.
That's the state.
The state, yes.
Okay.
Then you create a composable function to display it.
Okay.
And you add a button, composable.
Gotcha.
When clicked, it updates the count in our mutable state of.
So clicking the button changes the state.
Yes.
And because the function is observing that state,
right,
it updates the UI.
Exactly. The UI updates to reflect the new count.
That's really cool.
A simple but powerful example
I like it.
of state and recomposition in Jetpack Compose.
It's making sense to me now.
Good.
So now I'm ready to explore more advanced features.
Great.
What else can we do with Jetpack Compose?
Well, Jetpack Compose offers so much more.
What do you mean?
We can explore things like scaffolding, modal bottom sheets, and animations.
Ooh, animations.
Those are always fun.
Yeah, they are.
But first, let's talk about scaffolding.
What is scaffolding?
Scaffolding is like having a pre-designed blueprint for your app.
Oh, okay.
It provides a framework with common elements.
Like what?
Like an app bar, a floating action button, a bottom navigation bar, all laid out according to material design.
So it gives us a head start.
It does. It ensures consistency in your design.
Right.
And you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
So it's a time saver.
Definitely.
But wouldn't using a template limit creativity?
It's not about restricting creativity.
Okay.
It's about giving you a foundation to build on.
I see.
Like a flexible framework, not a rigid template. You can customize everything.
Everything.
The content, the colors, the styling, even rearrange the elements.
So we can personalize it.
Exactly.
To fit our needs.
Yes. It's a starting point,
Okay.
not the finish line.
I'm seeing how scaffolding can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Creating consistent and user-friendly apps.
It is.
Now, what about those modal bottom sheets?
Yeah.
That makes them so special.
Have you ever needed to select an option or confirm something in an app, but you didn't want to leave the current screen?
Yeah, I have.
Modal bottom sheets are perfect for that.
Okay.
They display interactive content without disrupting the flow.
So it's like a pop-up, but better.
Much better, more stylish.
Yeah.
They slide up from the bottom,
Okay.
covering only part of the screen,
I see.
keeping the user's context intact.
Gotcha.
And then they slide back down when you're done.
It's a nice, elegant solution.
It is.
How do we actually create them in Jetpack Compose?
It's actually very easy. You use a composable function called modal bottom sheet.
Okay.
And within that, you define the content.
And we can use any composable functions we want.
Any you want.
So it's consistent with the rest of Compose.
Exactly. And you have full control over the styling and layout.
This is making me think about so many possibilities.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
It gets those creative juices flowing.
I'm already imagining all the ways I can use them.
Good.
Now let's talk about those animations.
Oh, yes.
You said Jetpack Compose makes them easier
It really does.
than traditional Android development.
Much easier.
But I'm still a bit skeptical.
I understand. Animations can be tricky.
Yeah.
But Jetpack Compose simplifies them in a way you have to see to believe.
Okay. Tell me more. What's the secret?
It's all about the declarative approach.
Again.
Yes.
Yeah.
With traditional Android, you often had to define animations step by step,
Right.
manually specifying each transition.
Yeah, that could get messy.
It could, especially for complex animations.
It was a lot of work.
It was.
Yeah.
But with Jetpack Compose, you don't have to worry about those low-level details.
Oh, that's good.
You just define the start and end states.
Okay.
And Compose handles all the in-between frames.
So it's like magic.
It's like magic.
We describe what we want and it just does it.
Exactly. This declarative approach makes animations so much easier.
To create, understand, and maintain.
Yes. You can focus on the creative parts.
Like the timing and visual effects.
Yeah.
Without getting bogged down in code.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light.
Good.
Can you give me some examples?
Sure. Imagine a button that you want to scale up when pressed.
Okay.
In Compose, you define the default scale as 1.0.
Okay.
Then when pressed, you change it to, say, 1.1.
Okay.
Compose handles the transition, making it appear to grow smoothly.
That's a cool effect.
It is.
What about more complex animations?
Those are easy, too.
Like what?
Like moving an object across the screen.
Okay.
You define the starting and ending positions. Compose animates the movement.
Okay.
You can even control the duration, easing, and effects.
So much control.
Yes.
It feels like magic.
It does. Compose takes out the complexity,
That's great.
making animations accessible and enjoyable.
I'm really starting to appreciate Jetpack Compose.
Me too.
It can handle so much.
It can.
From basic layouts to complex animations.
Yeah.
But how does it fit into the bigger picture of Android development?
That's a great question.
You see, we can't forget about the millions of apps built with traditional views.
Right.
But Jetpack Compose is designed to live alongside this older approach.
Absolutely. It's all about a smooth transition.
And that's where interoperability comes in.
Exactly. It's one of its best features.
Can you remind me how Compose View and Android View work?
Sure. Imagine you have a large app built with traditional views.
Okay.
Rewriting it all in Compose at once would be a huge task.
A massive undertaking.
Yeah, not practical for most teams.
Right.
So that's where Compose View comes in. It lets you embed Compose UI within a traditional layout.
Like a Compose island.
Exactly. A Compose island.
I like that.
You can gradually introduce Compose bit by bit
One screen at a time.
or one component at a time.
That's a great approach.
It makes it much less intimidating.
I agree.
But what if you need a traditional view inside your Compose UI?
Does that happen?
It does. Sometimes you might need a component that hasn't been ported to Compose yet.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe you have a custom view that you don't want to rewrite.
Makes sense.
That's when you use Android View.
Android View. Okay.
It lets you embed traditional views within Compose.
So it goes the other way.
It does.
But isn't that like mixing oil and water?
You'd think so,
Yeah.
but Compose handles it gracefully.
Oh, wow.
Android View represents a traditional view as a composable function.
So we can treat them just like any other composable building block.
You got it. It's incredibly flexible.
And to make it even easier,
Compose also supports Android View binding.
Android View binding. That sounds familiar. Didn't we talk about that with view models?
You have a great memory.
I try.
Android View binding lets you work with views more efficiently.
Yeah.
It eliminates those find view BI'd calls.
Right. By generating binding classes.
Exactly.
And it works with Android View.
It does. Compose integrates seamlessly with it.
So we can use Android View binding to inflate and access our views,
Yes.
just like in a traditional app.
Exactly.
Compose has thought of everything
It has.
when it comes to interoperability.
The developers put a lot of effort into making it flexible.
That's good to know.
They understand that migration takes time.
Yeah, it's not an overnight thing.
Nope, it's a process.
This is making me feel a lot more confident about exploring Compose
That's great.
and incorporating it into my projects.
Good. It's a fantastic framework.
I can't wait to dive in deeper.
Me too.
But before we move on, I want to go back to those animations.
Sure. What about them?
Can you give me a few more examples?
Of course. Imagine you're building an e-commerce app. You want to animate a product image when tapped.
Okay.
You could use a scale animation to make it grow slightly.
That would be a nice touch.
It would add polish and make it feel responsive.
Yeah.
You could do similar things with buttons or list items.
Okay, I'm starting to see the potential.
Good.
But what about more complex animations?
Compose can handle those too,
Like what?
like animating the path of an object
Like-
or a sequence of animations.
That sounds challenging.
It's not as bad as you think.
Yeah.
For example, in a game, you might animate a character jumping.
Okay.
You could define a series of animations. Jumping up, moving forward, landing,
Yeah.
and Compose would handle the transitions.
How do we synchronize those?
Compose has powerful APIs for controlling the timing and sequencing.
Okay.
You can use functions like animate float state, animate color state,
Okay.
animate content size.
And what about easing?
You can even use an animation spec
What does that do?
to define the easing curve, duration, and other properties.
Oh, wow, that's a lot of control.
It is.
But it doesn't sound too complicated.
It's not. Compose takes care of the hard parts.
That's good to know.
You just focus on the creative side.
This has been incredible.
It has.
We've explored so much.
We have.
From the basics to the more advanced features of Compose.
Yes, it's a powerful framework.
And it's clear that it's reshaping how we think about building UIs.
It is.
But now I want to step back and look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
We've talked about the technical side.
Right.
What about its broader implications for Android development?
That's a great question.
What impact do you see Compose having in the long run?
I think Compose is a pivotal moment
Really?
in the evolution of Android.
Okay.
Its declarative nature aligns with the trend of simplifying complex tasks,
Right.
making code more readable and maintainable.
So it's not just about making things easier for developers.
It's about creating a better approach.
More sustainable approach
Exactly.
to building apps.
And this shift to declarative UI isn't limited to Android.
What do you mean?
We're seeing it everywhere.
Back where?
Like iOS with Swift UI,
Okay.
web development with React,
Mm-hmm.
even cross-platform with Flutter.
So it's a big movement
It's a fundamental change.
in how we build UIs.
Yes. And this has huge implications for mobile development.
What kind of implications?
Well, as declarative UI becomes more common,
Yeah.
we'll see some key trends emerge.
Like what?
First, increased developer productivity.
Oh, that's good.
Compose streamlines development, reduces boilerplate code,
What?
simplifies animations,
Mm-hmm.
makes it easier to manage state and data flow.
So developers can focus on the fun stuff.
Exactly, the innovative features.
That's great.
This means faster development cycles, more frequent updates.
A better app experience overall.
Exactly. And with that comes more creative and ambitious apps.
Oh, cool.
Developers have more time to experiment and push boundaries.
That's exciting.
They can create truly delightful user experiences.
I love that.
It's inspiring, isn't it?
It is. But what about the learning curve? Will all Android developers switch to Compose overnight?
Of course not. It takes time to learn a new framework.
Yeah.
But I think the transition will be smoother than expected.
Why is that?
Well, first, it's built on Kotlin.
Right, which is what most Android devs use now.
Exactly. Many are already familiar with Kotlin.
Makes sense.
And Compose itself is designed to be ergonomic.
Ergonomic.
Yes. It emphasizes clarity and readability,
Okay,
a consistent approach to building UIs.
got it.
The APIs are well documented, and there are tons of resources.
So it's not too difficult to learn.
It's not. The benefits are worth it.
I agree.
And don't forget about the community.
Ah, yes, the community.
Compose has a vibrant community.
That's good.
Developers sharing knowledge and helping each other.
That's so important.
It is. This strong community will help with Compose's adoption.
It's great to have that support.
It is.
But are there any drawbacks or challenges?
Of course, with anything new, there are always challenges.
Like what?
One concern is performance. Compose is designed to be efficient,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still relatively new.
Right.
So there might be some edge cases.
Where performance could be an issue.
Yes, but the Compose team is actively working on it. Every release brings improvements.
So the future looks bright for performance.
It does.
What other challenges are there?
Another challenge is the transition process.
Okay.
Migrating a large app to Compose can be complex.
It takes time.
It does.
But Compose is flexible with interoperability.
Yes, you can migrate gradually.
That makes it more manageable.
It does.
So while there are challenges,
Mm-hmm.
they're not insurmountable.
Exactly. And the benefits outweigh the drawbacks.
I agree.
And as Compose matures,
Yeah.
we'll see those challenges diminish.
This has been an incredible deep dive
It has.
into declarative UI and Jetpack
We
Compose,
covered a lot.
the technical details, the benefits, the challenges,
All of it.
and the future of Android development.
Yes, it's an exciting time.
I hope our listeners have gained a deeper understanding
Me too.
of why Compose is a game changer
It is a game changer.
and why it's worth learning.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with a question.
Okay, shoot.
Given all the advantages of declarative UI,
Mm-hmm.
welcome back. Last time, we laid the foundation,
Yes, we did.
exploring why declarative UI frameworks are gaining traction.
Mm-hmm.
We took a close look at Jetpack Compose, its building blocks,
Right?
and how seamlessly it integrates with existing Android concepts.
It's really quite remarkable
It is.
how it takes those building blocks, composable functions, modifiers, state management, and lets you construct these intricate UIs.
It is. It's almost like assembling a Lego masterpiece.
I love that analogy. It really captures the feeling
Yeah.
of building with Compose.
But today, we're moving beyond the basic bricks.
Okay.
We're going to explore some of the more advanced tools and techniques. Remember those intriguing topics we teased last time? Scaffolding, modal bottom sheets and animations.
Oh, yes, I do.
We're diving into those today.
I'm excited to shed some light on these features and how they can really elevate your Android app development.
It's not just about the bells and whistles.
No, not at all.
They solve real problems and enhance user experience.
In very meaningful ways.
All right, let's start with scaffolding.
Okay, scaffolding.
You mentioned it's like a blueprint.
Right.
But I need you to break it down for me.
Okay, sure.
What exactly is scaffolding in Jetpack Compose? And why should developers be excited about it?
Imagine you're starting a new painting.
Okay.
Instead of meticulously measuring and drawing guidelines, you use a pre-stretched canvas with a basic frame.
Right.
That frame gives your painting structure, ensures a consistent look and feel, right?
Right.
That's what scaffolding does for your app UI.
So it's like having a pre-built template for the app's layout.
Precisely. Scaffolding in Jetpack Compose provides a basic structure, incorporating common elements like an app bar, a bottom navigation bar, a floating action button, and a drawer, all lay out according to material design.
So we get that consistent look.
You do. That modern look and feel across your app.
Without designing each screen from scratch.
Exactly.
That's super useful.
It is.
Especially for developers who want to focus on building features.
Right.
Rather than spending time on basic layouts.
Exactly.
But wouldn't using a template limit creativity?
That's a great question.
What if I want to customize the look and feel?
Scaffolding isn't about restricting your creativity.
Okay.
It's about providing a solid foundation.
Okay, a foundation.
That you can build upon.
I see.
Think of it as a flexible framework.
Gotcha.
Not a rigid template.
Okay.
You can customize the content, colors, styling, even rearrange the elements.
So we can really make it our own.
Absolutely. You have complete control.
That's good to know.
It's a starting point, not the finish line.
Okay, I like that.
It's a blueprint that you can adapt and personalize.
To fit our specific needs.
Exact.
I'm starting to see how scaffolding can be a real time saver.
It is.
And a powerful tool for creating user-friendly apps.
It really is.
Okay, now, let's talk about those modal bottom sheets.
Yes.
What makes them so special?
Have you ever been using an app?
Yeah.
And you needed to select something or confirm an action, but you didn't want to go to a whole new screen?
Yeah, all the time.
Modal bottom sheets are perfect for that.
Okay.
They're a clean and elegant way to display interactive content without disrupting the user's flow.
So it's like a pop-up dialogue.
It's like that, but much more integrated into the design.
Much more stylish.
Yes, much more stylish. They slide up gracefully from the bottom.
Oh, I see.
Covering only a portion of the main content.
Okay.
So the user's context stays intact.
They don't lose their place.
Exactly. And once they're done, this slides back down.
Disappears like magic.
Seamlessly, as if it were never there.
Okay, I'm picturing it now.
Got it.
It's a very elegant way to handle those situations.
It is.
Where you need to present the user with choices or information without interrupting their workflow.
Exactly.
But how do we create these modal bottom sheets in Compose?
It's surprisingly easy.
Oh, good.
You use a composable function called modal bottom sheet.
Modal bottom sheet.
And inside that function, you define the content you want to display.
And we can use any composable functions we want.
Any composable function you can think of.
That is all very consistent.
It is. Very intuitive.
And we have full control over the styling and layout.
Complete control.
This is sparking my creativity.
Okay, I love it.
I'm thinking of all sorts of ways to use them.
Good, good. That's what we like to hear.
Settings, menus, filters, confirmations.
All great use cases.
Maybe even mini games.
That's a fun idea. I like it.
Compose really makes you think differently about UI.
It does. It really does.
Speaking of engaging experiences.
Yes.
Let's talk about those animations.
Animations, my favorite.
You said Compose makes them easier than traditional Android development.
I did, and I stand by that statement.
Okay. I'm still a little skeptical.
I get it.
Animations can be tricky.
They can be, but Compose simplifies them so much.
You're going to have to prove it to me.
I will. I promise.
All right. What's the secret sauce?
It comes down to that declarative approach again.
Of course.
With traditional Android, you often had to define animations imperatively.
Right.
Specifying each step, each transition manually.
It's like choreographing a dance.
It really was.
Every move had to be perfect.
Very tedious.
A lot of work.
Yes.
But with Compose, you don't worry about those low-level details.
No, you don't.
Okay, that's good.
You define the start and end states of the animation.
Okay, the start and the end.
And Compose figures out everything in between.
Like magic.
It's like magic.
So we're giving high-level instructions. instead of micromanaging every detail.
And this makes animations incredibly easy to create.
Okay, I'm starting to come around.
Good.
But can you give me some specific examples?
Of course. Imagine a button that scales up when pressed.
Okay, a simple one.
You define the default scale as 1.0. When pressed, change it to 1.1.
Okay.
Compose handles the smooth transition.
So it grows smoothly.
Exactly.
What about moving an object or fading it in and out?
Those are just as easy.
Really?
Define the starting and ending positions for movement,
Okay.
or the opacity values for fading.
Right.
Compose will animate it for you.
We can even control the timing and effects.
You have full control over the duration, easing, and any visual effects you want.
This is pretty amazing.
It is. It takes the complexity out of animation.
It makes them more fun to work with.
Exactly. You can be more creative.
I'm really impressed with Compose.
It's a fantastic framework.
But now I'm thinking, how does it fit with existing apps?
Ah, yes, the real world.
We can't forget about the millions of apps built with traditional views.
True, true.
But Compose is designed to work alongside those.
Absolutely. It's designed for a smooth transition.
And that's where interoperability shines.
It really does.
You mentioned Compose View and Android View.
Yes. Those are key components.
Can you remind me how those work?
Of course. Imagine you have a massive app built with traditional views.
Okay, a huge one.
Rewriting it all in Compose at once would be daunting.
It would be a nightmare.
Yeah, not practical.
So what do we do?
That's where Compose View comes in.
Okay, Compose View to the rescue.
It lets you embed Compose UI inside a traditional view layout.
Like a little Compose island.
Exactly. The little island of Compose.
I love that analogy.
It helps to visualize it.
So we can gradually introduce Compose.
You can. One screen, one component at a time.
So it's less overwhelming.
Much less intimidating.
But what if we need a traditional view inside Compose?
That happens too.
It does.
Yes, sometimes you need a component that hasn't been ported to Compose. Oh, right.
Or complex custom view you don't want to rewrite.
Okay, I see.
That's where Android View comes in.
Android View to the rescue again.
It lets you embed traditional views within your Compose UI.
So it goes the other way.
It does.
But doesn't that create conflicts?
You'd think so, but Compose handles it really well.
It does.
Yes. Android View represents a traditional view as a composable function.
So we can treat them like any other composable function.
Exactly. It's all very consistent.
That's amazing. And what about Android View binding?
Yes. Android View binding.
We talked about that before.
We did. It helps you work with views more efficiently.
Right. It gets rid of those find view by id calls.
It does. By generating those binding classes.
And it works with Android View.
Seamlessly.
Wow, Compose really has thought of everything.
It has. It's designed for flexibility.
It makes me feel good knowing I can transition gradually.
That's the goal.
This interoperability is really impressive.
It's one of the key strengths of Compose.
So we can gradually migrate our apps.
And even integrate traditional views when needed.
Exactly. The best of both worlds.
Okay, I have to ask you one more time about those animations.
Oh, you want to see more animation magic?
I do. Can you give me a few more concrete examples?
Okay, imagine you're building an e-commerce app.
Right.
And you want to animate a product image when the user taps it.
Okay, I'm listening.
You could use a simple scale animation to make the image grow slightly larger.
That would be a nice touch.
It would add polish and make it feel more responsive.
Yeah, I like that.
And you could use similar animations for buttons or list items.
Okay, so subtle animations to enhance interactivity.
Exactly.
What about more complex animations?
Compose can handle those too.
Like what? Give me an example.
Imagine a game where a character jumps over an obstacle.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You could define a series of animations. One for jumping up, one for moving forward, and one for landing.
So multiple animations chained together.
Exactly. And Compose would handle the transitions smoothly.
How do we control the timing and order of those?
Compose has powerful APIs for that.
Okay, like what?
Functions like animate float state, animate color state, animate content size.
Okay, those sound familiar.
They allow you to animate changes to values over time.
And what about easing?
You can use an animation spec to define the easing curve, duration.
So we have lots of control.
Complete control. You can create some really sophisticated effects.
This is making me excited to dive into Compose and try it out.
That's great. It's a really fun framework to work with.
It sounds like it.
It is.
This has been a fantastic journey so far.
It has been.
We've explored the building blocks of Compose.
We have.
Delved into interoperability, and even touched upon the magic of animations.
It's been a whirlwind tour
It
of
has.
some of the most powerful features of Compose.
And we've only scratched the surface.
There's still so much more to explore.
There is, and we'll do that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, looking forward to it.
We'll go even deeper and discuss the future of Android development.
Sounds good. I can't wait.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey.
We have.
Exploring declarative UI frameworks.
Yeah.
Focusing on Jetpack Compose.
It's been a lot of fun.
It has. From basic building blocks to advanced animations, it's clear that Jetpack Compose is changing how we build Android UIs.
I think it's safe to say it's reshaping the whole landscape.
It really is.
It empowers developers to create such elegant and efficient apps.
And modern.
Oh, absolutely. Modern is the key word.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to step back and look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the technical aspects.
We have.
But I'm curious about its broader implications.
For the Android ecosystem.
Yeah, for the future of mobile app development.
That's a great point to consider.
What kind of impact do you see Compose having in the long run?
Well, I think it's a pivotal moment.
In what way?
In the evolution of Android development,
Okay.
its declarative nature. It really aligns with this growing trend.
What trend?
Of simplifying complex tasks.
Yeah.
Making code more readable.
Right.
More maintainable.
So it's not just about making things easier for developers.
No, it's about creating a more sustainable approach
I see.
to building apps.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this shift towards declarative UI, it's not just Android.
Really?
Oh no, we're seeing it everywhere.
Like where?
Like iOS with Swift UI,
Oh, okay.
web development with frameworks like React, even cross-platform solutions like Flutter.
So Jetpack Compose is part of a larger movement.
It is. It's a fundamental change.
In how we build UIs.
Exactly. A paradigm shift.
That's a good way to put it.
And this has big implications.
Big implications for what?
For the future of mobile app development.
Okay, I'm listening. What kind of implications?
Well, as declarative UI becomes more and more common, I think we'll see a few key trends emerge.
Okay, what kind of trends?
First, I think we'll see a significant increase in developer productivity.
Well, it's always good.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Because Compose streamlines so much of the development process.
It does?
It reduces boilerplate code.
Oh.
It simplifies animations.
Right.
It makes state and data flow so much easier to manage.
So developers can focus on the features.
Exactly. The fun stuff.
The innovation.
And that leads to faster development cycles, more frequent updates.
And ultimately, a better app experience for users.
Precisely. And with that increased productivity comes the potential for more creative and ambitious apps.
Ooh, that's exciting.
It is. Developers have more time to experiment, to push the boundaries.
Right, to think outside the box.
They can really focus on creating delightful user experiences.
I love that vision.
It's inspiring, isn't it?
It is. But what about the learning curve?
Right, the learning curve.
Can we expect all Android developers to switch to Compose overnight?
Of course not. Learning any new framework takes time.
It does.
But I think the transition to Compose will be smoother than some might expect.
Really? Why is that?
Well, first, because it's built on Kotlin.
Right, which is already the preferred language for Android.
Exactly. So many developers are already comfortable with Kotlin.
That makes sense.
It makes the transition a lot easier.
It does.
And Jetpack Compose itself,
yeah,
it's designed with developer ergonomics in mind.
Ergonomic.
Meaning it focuses on clarity, readability,
right,
a consistent approach to building UIs.
Makes sense.
The APIs are well documented, and there are tons of resources available.
So it's not too hard to pick up?
It's not. The benefits are worth the effort.
Okay, good to know.
And of course, there's the community support.
Right, the community.
Jetpack Compose has a vibrant and growing community.
I've heard that.
It's true.
Yeah.
Developers sharing knowledge, answering questions.
That's always helpful.
It is. It makes learning so much easier.
Especially when you're tackling something new.
Exactly. And I think this strong community will play a big role in the widespread adoption of Compose.
I think so too.
It's a huge factor.
Okay, so we've talked about the positive.
Good stuff.
Yeah, but are there any potential drawbacks or challenges?
Of course, there are always challenges with new technology.
Like what?
One concern is performance.
Okay, performance is always important.
It is, especially in mobile development.
Right.
Now, Compose is designed to be efficient,
Okay.
but it's still relatively new.
Yeah,
There might be some edge cases where performance could be an issue.
that's understandable.
It is. But the good news is
What's the good news?
the Compose team is constantly working on improvements.
Oh, that's good to know.
And every release brings significant performance gains.
So it's getting better all the time.
It is. It's a work in progress, but the future is bright.
Okay, good. What other challenges?
Another challenge is the transition process itself.
Right, moving from the old way to the new way.
Exactly. Migrating a large app to Compose can be complex.
It takes time and planning.
It does. But remember, Compose offers a lot of flexibility.
Right, that interoperability we talked about.
You can migrate gradually, one piece at a time.
That makes it less daunting.
Much less daunting.
So while there are challenges,
Mm-hmm.
they're not deal breakers.
Nope. The benefits outweigh the drawbacks.
I agree.
And as Compose matures, those challenges will become even smaller.
This has been an incredible deep dive
It has been a lot of fun.
into declarative UI and Jetpack Compose.
We've explored so much.
The technical details, the benefits, the challenges.
And the exciting possibilities for the future.
I hope our listeners are feeling inspired
Me too.
to dive into Compose and see what they can create.
It's a powerful tool waiting to be unleashed.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time. Keep exploring, keep learning.
And keep building amazing apps.